look at everybody. It's so good to see all of you. It's really, please turn on your video if you haven't, just for the talk. Unless there's some real pressing reason why you don't want to do that. But I prefer it if you can, because it's very nice for me to see your faces. It inspires me and helps me. So please, if you can, do put on your video. And it's just so lovely to see, you know, folks I don't know and many folks I do know, and folks all around the world. It's a real joy. Thank you all for being here and sharing your sitting with us. Real wonderful, wonderful. And I mean, I don't know, you know, of course you're all in different places, but here in Santa Fe, oh, it's so beautiful right now. It's May, you know, and it's just this rich sunlight of early summer, you know, when everything here is very green and lush, unusually, or at least lush looking. And it reminds me actually of my youth in growing up in England. You know, there was this thing almost every year it would happen. There'd be a heat wave in May. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't really every year, but commonly there'd be a heat wave in May for sort of a week or 10 days or 2 weeks. And it would be this just glorious taste of summer. And there would be all these wild predictions that came with it of this was going to be the summer to beat all summers. You know, most years there'd be this very optimistic view of the months ahead, because, you know, it's one of these strange things about England is that it just doesn't have a reliable summer. I mean, you know, you could live in, I don't know about maybe Seattle or something, or Portland, Oregon, I don't know, but I think even there they can, you know, I'm saying even there because I know they're kind of rainy places like England, but I think even there you can be fairly confident that there'll be at least a sort of 6-week stretch of summer, maybe longer, maybe 10 weeks or 12 weeks. But in the UK, you just can't count on that. In fact, it's very rare that you get, you know, a real summer. You know, it's more like patches of sun and patches of rain and patches of kind of warm and then patches of cold. And I'm actually, as I'm saying this, I'm wondering if it's still true, or has global warming, you know, really changed the situation? It might have, actually. But anyway, when I was a kid, May was a sort of magical time. There'd be a spell of what we all hoped summer would be, you know, and it would provoke these optimistic prognostications from the weather people, which very, very rarely materialized, actually, when July and August rolled around, June, July and August. But anyway, there's a taste of that I pick up here in May, and it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. But we are in this Zen practice. We are explicitly, and I say explicitly because Mumon, one of the great Zen teachers of the 13th century, he actually says in one of his verses, he says, you know, blossoms in spring, cool breezes in summer, beautiful snow in winter, and lovely moon in autumn. You know, you may think of these lovely seasons, and these seasons of being lovely times, but you really aren't, in a sense, you're not really living till you've found when truly is the one happiest season of all, independent of conditions, fully expressed by conditions, both. Now that's really the, in some sense, that's a sort of almost a summary of the purpose of practice. But in a way, I kind of feel it's a summary of the purpose of life in a certain way. I mean, that may sound too much for some of you, and I may well be wrong, but in a certain way, to find this, actually, I was just talking the other day with a philosopher, who's a lovely guy, who's a champion of the Stoics, with Bill Irvin, he's called. I may have mentioned him before, with his great book on the Stoic life, A Guide to the Good Life, strongly recommended. And, the conversation started with him, well, we've all got these different ways of addressing the problem. And it was just such a happy thing to reflect on what is the problem. You could describe it, you could parse that out, you could express that, you could understand that, of course, in many different ways, but somewhere in the zone of how can we actually receive this incomparable gift of, being alive? How can we understand what that is more deeply? How can we, what actually is it to be alive? That you could call that. That's the problem. What is consciousness? That's a problem of science right now, one of the so-called hard problems. What is this existence? You could take it that way. But you could also take it in the more traditionally Buddhist ways. Basically, it's suffering. Suffering is the problem. And the solution in the Buddhist view sort of comes with, at the deeper levels anyway, comes with an answer to what is this? Who am I? And Zen is no exception as a form of practice that's, depending on your point of view, deeply Buddhist or partly Buddhist. It's no exception. And here we are still in the coronavirus experience of the planet, of humanity, which is, we don't know how long it's going to go on. Lockdown is sort of being lifted, it seems, in parts of the world, or gently in phased lifting of some of the restrictions is going on. But we all know that, we all know that we don't know what's really ahead. Will there be further waves? Will this be is this really going to be sort of over in kind of a few months, or maybe it's a series of waves over years? I mean, we just don't know. And we know already, of course, the death toll and the toll on, on all kinds of areas of life, livelihood and freedom of movement and social life drastically changed. All these things going on that have been causing a lot of suffering, and quite apart from the suffering that for many people is exacerbated from uncertainty, just the sheer difficulty of living with uncertainty. And what are we? So we could say that we're in a time of sort of an exacerbated need for practice. Perhaps we might put it like that. Of course, from our sort of deeper perspective, of course, that's not true. We're always in a time of needing, or at least the possibility of deeply addressing this so-called problem, deeply addressing it. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to sort of give away my answer, sort of thing, is that, basically, the problem is, what it is really is a vast opportunity. It is a staggering opportunity, this so-called problem. But we won't really open up the opportunity unless in some way we recognize this sense of a problem. It's because we're seeing, I don't know who I am. I don't know what this is. I don't even really know what suffering is. I know what it feels like, but what really is it? You know, if we recognize that we don't know these things, and somehow we at least want to have ways of addressing them, of managing them at the very least, maybe going deeper and really sort of exploring them. So until we recognize that, we're not going to recognize that the problem is an opportunity, if you see what I mean. I mean, in a way, the only problem really is, man, it's such a great opportunity. How do I actually meet it? So figuring out, so in one way, the real problem is figuring out how to actually meet the opportunity, because it's such a sort of infinite opportunity. Do you see what I mean? So that's, I don't know if I'm really conveying this very clearly, but, or even, I mean, I don't mean conveying, I mean just expressing it clearly, you know, because if I say conveying, it almost implies like, you guys should be getting it. No, I don't mean that. I mean that, am I just expressing myself clearly? That there are different ways of understanding this term problem. And you could see it as like, you know, on a certain level, the real problem is I recognize, somehow I sense that my very existing, being here like this, just has to be really somehow an infinite gift. But I don't experience it that way, you know. So that's a problem. How do I get my experience to measure up to what's really happening here right now? And I'm happy to say that there are solutions to that. There are paths, there are gateways, and Zen offers one of them. And it's this path of being still and letting go. And within that path, we've got certain methodologies, you know, just sitting, you know, fine, you know, just drop everything, just sit. No approach, no method, no strategy, no scheme, just drop it all. And there's great wisdom in that, actually, because they're really always, in a sense, whatever practice we're doing, actually, to get this sort of, how can I put it, way of feeling out inside yourself, have I got a plan? Have I got a scheme? Have I got an agenda for my practice? If you can seek that out with your subtle radar, you know, and find out if you do, then that's the thing you're going to need to drop. Even if you've got a more structured method than just sitting, you still have to drop the program. Sort of, I know what I'm aiming for. I've got my strategy, I've got my tactics, I know where I'm trying to get. No, you don't. Not from the Zen point of view. You've got to let that go. And you see that, you know when you've let it go, because it feels good. You just feel right away, an ease in being. Sort of, you know, we're starting to get more aligned with the way, because we're not trying to get it. It's just like Joshu with his teacher Nansen. You know, what's the way? Ordinary mind is the way. How do I find it? If you try to find it, you're going against it. So yes, there's something to find, but it's ordinary, meaning it's already here. And if you look for it, you're going against it. So see, if you've got that little scheme of, I'm going to find the way, that's already actually counterproductive. You've got to drop that. You know, can you feel that? There's a little nugget somewhere inside us commonly that is a little sort of kernel of, I know what I'm trying to do. You know, I've got a little bit of an agenda with this sitting. You know, so Joshu, as a young guy, young student, got this very key lesson that he got it in the sense of penny dropped. He could recognize that he had a little intentionality about his practice that had to just dissolve, just go. And it's so sweet when that releases. It's so sweet because all is just here, just as it is. There's actually no need. There's really no need. So this weekend, more than weekend, 3-day, half-week retreat is a chance to be tasting this release of intention. It's so beautiful because in a way, you know, intention in practice is also beautiful, but, you know, I really want to devote myself to finding the way, by the way, you know, is a Taoist term, and you could pretty much take it as equivalent to Bud or awakening from the Buddhist side. You know, I want to devote myself to the way, I want to devote myself to awakening. I believe in the, you know, infinite you know, the infinite capaciousness of my heart. I believe that I don't fully know my own heart, and I want to. That's a beautiful thing. But imagine if, having established that intention, and you then forget about it, you let it go, you don't need it anymore. You're on the way, you're on the path. You don't need the intention, you're on the path. You're practicing, you don't need intention. And you let intention melt. Can you just feel how that is, that you let it melt and the world comes alive? It's already here. You know, this awake world is already here. It's not around us, it's around us and all through us. It's totally, you know, saturating us. It's not an external world, it's one world, you know, and it's one awakeness. So now, ding, 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 all this talk of problem and way and method and all this intention, what we're doing, you know, in Zen, a number of you are doing this, a number of you have done this, a number of you might do this in time to come, sitting with an insanely small method, namely just one little syllable that ideally we understand it as meaningless. It does have a meaning, but we're not interested in that. It's just this little mu. Why would it be helpful for a human being to spend inordinate numbers of hours focusing internally on a silently sounded syllable, mu? Why would that possibly be in any way sort of a smart thing to do by way of spending your time? If we're looking for the good life, the well-spent life, the well-examined, well-lived life, if we're hoping to, you know, when we come to the end of our time, be able to sort of look back and think, I'm really glad I did many of the things I did. We'll all have some regrets, I'm sure. That's part of the picture. But basically, I'm really happy with the way I spent my life. I'm dying at peace. Why would inordinate numbers of hours, even days, even weeks, even years, spent concentrating on a little syllable, mu? Why might that seem like time well spent? Well, I'm gonna read a little passage. First of all, this is like a little bit. It's a story, and actually, I have read it some time ago in the Zendo, but I want to read it again. It's from a book called The Lost Books of the Odyssey, which is a really interesting little imaginary book, a book of fiction. This computer programmer from Silicon Valley somewhere decided he wanted to write a novel. And he wrote this wild little book of imaginary books that little short sections, that didn't make it into the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey. And this is one of them where Agamemnon, who's the Greek king, is kind of, one night a black cloud of grief descended on Agamemnon. He gets really miserable. And he summons all his sort of wise entourage, wise retainers, and says to them, you got to write me a book that clearly and explicitly explains everything under the sun, even unto all the mysteries hidden within the earth, the true names of every living thing, the number of grains of sand, the secret histories of the gods, and the tumultuous futures of the stars, all to be writ fair in no more and no less than 1,000 pages. So actually there's three wise men, Nestor, Palamedes, and Odysseus. They confer with their counselors, and then at last they turned back to the throne, bowed as one, and said it would be done. And that night they left Troy, where the Greek army was camped, and headed off with cartloads of gold, promising to return no later than as soon as they got back. So they go off to do this great task, and they succeed, and they come back. And by the time they come back, the king's beard had turned silver, and his limbs were twisted like oak branches. And the three sages bowed before their sovereign, and with a flourish presented a heavy book bound in tarnished silver, containing 1,000 thick, densely written pages. When opened, the book released a waft like hot iron in a winter forge. Within, Agamemnon read of many things: the history of his ancestors, the detailed plans of the castle on Mount Olympus, the mathematics underlying populations of herring in the sea, the evolution of stars, and the fencing style of a certain little-known sect of Sicilian masters, a survey of the many layers of the earth and the currents and tidal schedules of its vast seas of magma, and on, and a great many more topics. It had been impossible to fit this wealth of knowledge into a mere 1,000 pages, even with letters no larger than a grain of the ubiquitous white sand. So the sages had made the book read differently and coherently, forward and backward, from bottom to top and top to bottom. If every other word was skipped, and if every third letter was ignored, and so on. So it's like you can read it 1,000 ways, these 1,000 pages. Agamemnon read until his eyelids were heavy and his chin sank into his breast. He said, this is not it. This is not it at all. I wanted a book that gave me some understanding, not this cabinet of wonders, this encyclopedia of encyclopedias tricked into a millennium of pages. I'm very disappointed. However, I won't punish you, but I'll give you another chance. I'll make it exceedingly simple. Find the single sentence that contains the sum total of all wisdom. So then they go off for another very long time. And finally, they only, actually, I think in the end, only Yeah, they come back, that's right, with a dagger sheathed in a red cloth. The king drew the mirror bright double-edged blade, and on both sides read, "And this too shall pass." That was the single sentence. For a long time, the king thought deeply and seemed almost to smile. This is better. Here is a comfort in sorrow and a check on joy. But even this is not enough. I've left too much room for interpretation. So I'll rephrase the task one more time. Bring me everything. The skies and their clouds, and the rain pouring into the oceans, and every grain of sand on all the beaches, every ant crawling on a stone, every god in their pomposity, all in a single word. Showing no surprise, the councillors dispersed yet again. Seasons came and went. Then Odysseus returned alone. He took the king's skeletal, bone-coloured claw and slipped onto it a silver ring set with a blue gem, the colour of the western sky in the failing of the day. Look into the gem, sire. There is your word. Agamemnon looked, but what he made of the word is not recorded, because a moment later he slumped forward, finally dead. Also not recorded is whether Odysseus had poisoned the ring or whether he had found the word and it sufficed. So we actually do have that word. And it's mu. Mu. This one little mu. It is really, truly that word, that one word. If you think I'm crazy, listen to Mumon, who compiled the great collection, the Mumon Can. He talks about his own practice. He says, for the practice of Zen, pass the barrier set up by the ancient ancestors. To attain to marvelous enlightenment, extinguish all thoughts of the ordinary mind, because then you can actually experience ordinary mind, by the way. So what is the barrier set up by the ancestors? Just this mu, the one barrier of our sect. So it has come to be called the gateless gate of Zen. Those who have passed the barrier are able to see not only Joshu face to face, but to walk hand in hand with all the descending line of ancestors. You will see with the same eye that they see with, hear with the same ear that they hear with. Wouldn't it be a wonderful joy? He's talking from his own experience here. A wonderful joy. Isn't there anyone who wants to pass this barrier? Then concentrate your whole self into this mu, making your whole body 360 bones and joints, 84,000 pores, to a solid lump of questioning. Mu, what is mu? Day and night without cease, keep digging into it. No meaning. Extinguish all thoughts which you've cherished up to the present. No knowing, just mu. After a certain period, mu will come to fruition. Inside and out will become one. And you'll be like a dumb person who's had a dream. You will know yourself and for yourself only. You'll, why for yourself only? Well, we'll see. Because then he's talking about very, very deep samadhi, absorption. This deep, deep, one whole experience, one whole single awareness, one pointed samadhi, one very utterly suffusing one mu, suffusing totality of experience, one mu. Please don't misunderstand, that's not yet awakening. That's very deep samadhi. That's the part we can cultivate. We can cultivate our mindful awareness. We can cultivate sort of a all-inclusive wholeness of awareness, that too. But then all of a sudden, mu breaks open. I mean, because by then, you're inseparable from mu. So when mu breaks open, you break open. It astonishes heavens, shakes the earth. If you meet a Buddha, you'll kill Buddha. If you meet an ancestor, you'll kill the ancestor. Though you may stand on the brink of life and death, even you're about to die, you enjoy boundless freedom. In the 6 realms and 4 modes of birth, you live in samadhi of innocent play. I mean, I don't want to get into details, but there are 6 Buddhist realms, and human being is the 4th realm within that. And the 4 kinds of birth are things like egg, birth from an egg, birth through metamorphosis, birth through parthenogenesis, I think it's called, and birth through parturition, womb-based birth like mammals, and so on. So in all these realms of existence, basically, in all of them, the innocent play. Can you imagine? So basically, the lightness, the freedom, the ease, the joy, the weightless innocence. Truly, it's not just we become innocent. It's all innocent. It's all new. It's all of these births. They're all just happening now. It's sort of, it's lovely that he talks how this is just suffuses, pervades all forms of existence. All of it is liberated. I mean, well, already it's finding that to be true. And then once again, how should you concentrate on mu? Repeats himself. Basically, exhaust every ounce of energy you have in doing it. And if you don't give up, you'll be enlightened the way a candle in front of the altar is lighted by one touch of fire. The wick is just waiting to be lit. But I like that analogy in a sense because it does have this little suggestion that it comes from outside, and it's always a bit like that, this experience. I mean, the wick actually doesn't have what it takes to become a flame. It's very well prepared. It's soaked in wax, and it's just the right height, and it's pre-made to be burning. That's its purpose, but it actually can't do it without that little touch of fire from outside. And somehow, our mu practice gets us saturated in the wax. Our mu absorption. We're doing a jhana with mu. We're getting deeply steeped. So we're like in Buddha's, one of his analogies for dhyana was that there are different ones, but one was like there's I know some of you heard this, there's a soap maker making a ball of soap out of soap powder, rolling it around, mixing water in, and gradually as they add water to this soap powder in a bowl, rolling it around, it turns into a little ball of soap. He says this is how our body becomes in absorption, that we get completely suffused by peace or suffused by joy delight, but it becomes one piece of joy, one piece of peace, piece of peace, what I mean? One piece of ease. It suffuses all, one whole. So, maybe we say suffused with this flammable wax, and just one touch. And may I just remind you that this one whole, it's not just, the skin bag, it's actually your whole experience is being suffused, saturated, soaked. So when the fire touches, it's not just this body, this skin bag, it's your real body that is suddenly illuminated. And, these analogies are faulty because, it's not really, it's already completely awake. It's not being awakened. We're just awakened to the fact that it's already awake. So now that's some sort of sort of argument for apology for Mu practice. That Mumon, he sat with, or Wu Men Mumon, he sat with Mu for 6.5 years. He was very, I guess you'd say, dedicated to it. He would, famous stories, he'd bang his head on a pillar to stay awake. I'm not sure that's so smart, actually, these days. I really don't encourage that. Or sometimes he'd bang it on the floor, apparently. And when he awakened, he said it was, so clear blue sky with a tremendous clap of thunder. So this clap of thunder wasn't dependent on there being thunderheads in the sky. It's a clap of thunder in a totally blue sky, totally clear, empty sky with a great jolt of thunder. I like that actually as an analogy because it does suggest there, you see, if the clear sky is sort of like a jhana practice of getting emptier and quieter, not enough. This Zen is not content with peaceful jhana, not at all. It's this dynamism that is outside physics. It's underneath physics or something. It doesn't match with meteorology or any other sort of form we know. But the power of it, the energy of it, this is really like the Taoist side perhaps of Chan, Zen, this boundless energy, making everything. So it's totally empty, but making a huge thunderclap, a thunderclap that sort of engulfs the world, even though there's boundless quiet and clear blue sky, nothing but clear blue sky and massive thunderclap. That's a great analogy for Mu. Utter silence, and yet sort of the whole of life as we know it, jolted with a great sort of earthquake. It just doesn't make sense. You can't get it. You can't get near it. It just happens. You've got this Joshi trying to find it. Of course not. You can't find it. The equipment that you're trying to find it with will never find it. Meanwhile, the equipment you're trying to find it with already is it. Okay, so let's see. Excuse me, I just got to look at these notes here, see if I sort of... I think I just want to say one last thing, actually, on the whole koan is a monk asks Joshu, does a dog have Buddha nature? And Joshu says, Mu. Now, does a dog have Buddha nature? What's Buddha nature? Is Buddha nature something that's not here now? I mean, is it different from sitting here right now? Is it outside of sitting here right now? Maybe the monks sort of asking that, what is Buddha nature? What does that have to do with either dog or me? What am I? What is this consciousness that experiences this moment? What is going on now? What is this? And Joshu answers him, Moo. He's shown him, Moo. He's given him the answer. Moo. So infinitely kind and compassionate, Joshu. That's why his teaching lives on. I mean, look at this. Look at this. 1250 years later, in America, on the internet, with Zoom, on a Friday morning, during a pandemic. Look at us. We're sitting, in a really outwardly such different circumstances, but outwardly exactly the same circumstances. Still the way, functioning. Clothing's a bit different, architecture's a bit different, technology's a bit different. Human body, human mind, human heart, pretty much the same. And the fact of consciousness, just the same. The fact of world arising, just the same. The fact of what is this moment, this experience arising, just the same. The fact of sort of, in a sense, what's it arising from, just the same. And when you see what it's arising from, you see that it is what it's arising from. And you see that everything is exactly unified, one in that, and is exactly, perfectly Mu. I mean, it's amazing, actually, really, that one tiny little syllable could still be perfectly contemporary, perfectly relevant. It's so much not that Joshu said it 1200 years ago. It's just so much not that. Mu. Joshu saying it now. His mu. Just. It's not across time. Mu. It's not like it reaches across time or across continents. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Mu. Okay. Okay. Well, I have to admit I had a lot more notes, but that I have not got to. But I think that's I'm sure that's just what we need. I think take it as you do. Don't think that there's a right way to take what Henry's been saying. Not at all. It's just how it is for you now is the right way. You don't have to do anything special with a talk, did I get it? Did I not get it? That's absolutely not the way to approach this kind of talk. It's just, it is what it is. And what you make of it is exactly what you make of it. And whatever that is, forget it. So, I mean, just a last note that, obviously I recognize that not all of you are sitting with Mu, and you might feel, well, why did Henry spend so much time talking about Mu? It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Whatever your practice may be, as we just ease on through these days together, you just do your practice. And if this is somehow tangential, ancillary, this talk, so be it, it's fine. Just do your practice. If you're one of those who's working actively or using Mu, using is not the right word. It's becoming Mu in your sitting, just continue and don't think that you've got to sort of apply what I've been saying to your practice. You don't have to do any of that. This is these talks are fertilizer. They're not the plant doesn't have to do something about it. The plant just sits there doing what it does. And we're trying to create this, we're trying to help this become apparent, that this whole world and this whole experience of your now is the ideal soil for your practice to grow in. It doesn't need to do anything other than it's already doing. You're just recognizing more and more and more that, it's just like this, just like this, just like this. By the way, I do want to say this word ordinary, like Joshu said, ordinary mind is the way. It's a difficult word. It can be, because if you get the impression, there are some Zen lines that might give the impression that really there's just nothing sort of to be done different than your ordinary life. There's nothing to be discovered. In a sense, that's true, but in a sense that could be really misleading. Don't take it to mean there's, as it were, no point practicing. Nothing's gonna change. On one level, it's true, nothing's gonna change. But on another level, it's totally false if you take it to mean that there is no awakening. It's really misleading, actually. And in fact, the koan with Joshu and Nansen makes that very clear when Nansen at the end says, if you really find the way beyond all doubt, it's vast, it's boundless, as the empty sky. It's totally, it's infinite, it's empty, it's all, it's whole, and it's just Mu. Mu, ordinary little syllable, but wow, boundless, all-inclusive, utterly one, whole, all, empty, clear, here, right now. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, very, very much for sitting together like this. It's beautiful to be gathering like this. Now we're going to have tiny little, pause, and then Luke is